Months before investigators say they found 16 children living in horrific conditions in Vinton County, records show the Siders family left behind another home along with unanswered questions.
We didn't know that he even left for quite a while. It was kind of just an empty house, I guess. Left a mess. Not really that great a condition.
ABC6 uncovered 3 birth records showing members of the Siders family were living at a home on this street near Cheshire in Gallia County between 2020 and 2024. Melissa Edmonds lives just down the street. She says she never saw the kids, but her nephew did play with some of them a few years ago.
My sister-in-law told me that their kids had talked to them, but they didn't really know them either. Like, they didn't hang out with them or anything.
And what year was that?
Possibly 2021, summer 2022, somewhere in that area.
Josh Odell lives right behind this house on Ohmer Street. He says it plainly. The place seemed abandoned. No noise, no lights, nothing that would tell you 16 people were living inside. So here's the question nobody's been able to answer until now. If that house looked empty from the outside, what does it actually look like from the inside? What was sitting behind those walls the entire time neighbors were walking past, assuming nothing lived there at all? New footage just answered that question, and once you see what's actually in it, you'll understand why people who followed this case since day one are calling it the moment everything changed. In just a moment, we're going to walk through that footage frame by frame. But first, if you enjoy carefully researched true crime updates like this, consider subscribing. We follow every verified development as these cases unfold. You know the house on Ohmer Street in Hamden, Ohio, Vinton County, one of the poorest counties in the state. On June 30th, officers showed up to serve a warrant tied to a separate criminal case and found 16 children living inside, ages 18 months to 18 years. That separate case matters because it's not what most coverage first assumed. The warrant wasn't for domestic abuse. Court records show it was for 4 counts of public indecency against Gary Siders Jr., a 4th-degree misdemeanor, tied to incidents on May 23rd, 27th, 29th, and 31st, all allegedly at the Ohmer Street home and allegedly involving people outside the household. Officials still haven't confirmed on record that this specific warrant is what led deputies to the door that day, but it's the warrant the court paperwork shows was issued June 30th. The same day the children were found. Attorney General Andy Wilson called them almost feral. Sheriff Ryan Kane said the children were literally about to fall through the floor, and that livestock had been kept in better conditions. Most had reportedly spent roughly 4 years confined to a 12 by 12 room. Some couldn't speak. The oldest, 18, reportedly couldn't spell her own name. 4 adults were arrested. Gary Siders Sr., 73, Christina Siders, 66 or 67 depending on the record, their son Gary Siders II, 36, and his wife, Elizabeth Siders, 33. Each faces 16 counts of second-degree felony child endangerment, 1 per child. All pleaded not guilty. Gary Jr. separately faces those 4 public indecency misdemeanor counts, with a hearing on those charges set for July 23rd. 7 children were hospitalized that first night. 2 were flown to trauma centers by helicopter. That's where most coverage stopped. Here's what's new. 2 very different things are circulating, and mixing them up matters. The first is a verified 3D walkthrough of the home, published as part of ongoing case coverage. It puts you inside the space room by room, and it backs up, and in places deepens. What officials described. Bugs crawling across surfaces in nearly every room, clutter stacked in a way that points to years of accumulation, not a sudden collapse. One detail hits harder than any sheriff's quote. In a living room scene, sitting in the wreckage, there's a forget-me-not keepsake box, the kind hospitals give new parents on a labor and delivery unit. Beside it, a single baby doll, half buried in the mess. Those 2 objects say something the paperwork can't. There was tenderness here once, a mother who held a box meant to mark a birth as something worth remembering. Somewhere between that moment and the day investigators walked in, it all ended up buried under debris. The second is a set of clips claiming to show the property that Vinton County Prosecutor William Archer says have not been verified or authorized by law enforcement, meaning nobody official has confirmed there even real footage of this house. Archer has warned that entering the property without permission could be criminal trespass, with speculation, not confirmation, that some of this content was shot by drone. So when you see new footage of this house online, check which category it falls into before you trust it. This might be the most important thing that surfaced, because it answers the question everyone's been asking. How does this go unnoticed for 4 years? It might not be 4 years in this house specifically. Records show the family lived in Gallia County near Cheshire from 2020 to 2024, before Vinton County, and birth records confirm at least 3 children were born at that address. Birth records for one set of twins in January 2024 still list the Cheshire address. Birth records for another set of twins born a year later, in January 2025, list the new Hamden address instead. That puts the move to Vinton County sometime in 2024, which lines up with officials describing most of the last 4 years in the 12 by 12 room, not necessarily all of it in this house. Neighbor Melissa Edmonds said the family's departure from that Gallia County property went almost unnoticed. She never saw the children herself, though her nephew had played with some of them years earlier, and she described what was left behind as just an empty house, left in a mess. Bruce Gullick bought that Gallia County property afterward and was renovating it when he spoke to reporters. He said he found children's clothing stuffed in the attic, like someone had been living up there, and that the house reeked of a mix of human and pet waste. If that's accurate, the Vinton County conditions didn't start there. They continued, and likely worsened, from a home the family had already walked away from. This family wasn't invisible to the system. The trail just wasn't followed. Records obtained by NBC4 show that in October 2021, a truancy complaint was filed after 6 Siders children enrolled at Attaville Elementary in the Gallia County Local School District didn't attend a single day of the 2021 to 2022 school year. Gary Siders II and Elizabeth Siders were summoned to juvenile court. The case was opened and dismissed, with no apparent follow-up connecting chronic truancy to what may have been happening at home. The Vinton County children were never enrolled in school at all. Investigators have also said the family has ties to Jackson County and Pike County in Ohio, and possibly Wisconsin, a wider footprint than the 2 counties this script has focused on so far. Across all of it, the pattern is the same: a family that consistently kept its kids off the radar of any institution that might have asked questions.
ABC6 also obtained juvenile court records for 6 of the children. They showed the children were enrolled at Attaville Elementary School in Gallia County. But during the 2021-2022 school year, truancy complaints stated that they had not attended school for months. Those truancy cases were later closed in January of 2022 because court records stated the family could not be located and could not be served.
You have reached dispatch for the Gallia County Sheriff's Office.
That raises the question, did anyone try to find the family? ABC6 asked the Gallia County Sheriff's Office whether deputies followed up after the children could not be located. So far, we have not received a response.
They just kind of stayed inside and stayed to themselves.
While it is not clear when the Siders moved from Gallia to Vinton County, investigators said this month that the 16 victims stayed inside a 12 by 12 room in the village of Hamden for most of the last 4 years. Property records show a new owner bought the Gallia County house in May of this year. We found Bruce Gullick renovating the home. He says what he found inside suggests the conditions investigators described in Vinton County may have not started there.
Yeah, a lot of kids' clothes in the attic, stuffed away like someone was living up in there. And the whole entire house was just urine and human and cat feces, so it was pretty rough.
Elizabeth Siders was 15 in 2008 when she married 18-year-old Gary Siders Jr. The two lived on the same street in Gallipolis, Ohio, but crossed into Mason County, West Virginia, to marry at the courthouse. She had an 8th grade education He had a ninth. 2 months later, she gave birth to their first child. Her attorney says she's the mother of all 16 children found in the home, though investigators say they don't yet have birth certificates confirming parentage for each one. She's not the only teenage bride in the family. Tessie Wright was 14 and pregnant when she married 48-year-old Richard Siders, a cousin of Gary Sr., in Gallia County in 2002. The following year, in the same county, 15-year-old Virginia Siders married Joshua Saunders. Ohio law at the time allowed minors to marry with parental consent, and some of these marriages crossed into West Virginia, where the rules were looser still. It's a pattern spanning at least 2 decades. Very young girls married to much older men, normalized inside the family, never flagged until it produced this. Gary Siders Sr. was hospitalized in Athens County after a fall, and doctors identified a serious condition requiring specialized care. He was released on a recognizance bond with GPS monitoring rather than the full $300,000 cash bond, partly, Prosecutor Archer said, because the county would otherwise be covering his hospital costs. His competency to stand trial is now in question. Christina Siders, Gary Jr., and Elizabeth Siders remain in custody on that same $300,000 bond. Elizabeth's attorney, J. Thomas Stolley, has filed for her release. He says she doesn't ask about her own timeline. She asks about her kids. He's cited her lack of a criminal record, her willingness to wear a GPS monitor, and a stable address. He's also said she speaks positively of Gary and describes their intention as simply wanting a big family, a framing her own brother, Jeremy Russell, has reportedly pushed back on. Stolley has also said he isn't yet sure himself whether Elizabeth should be considered a victim in this case rather than solely a defendant. Her attorney has also directly disputed one core allegation. He says there's no clear evidence the children were forcibly confined to the 12-by-12 room. That's not settled. It's an active dispute, and it stands opposite what the Attorney General and Sheriff described publicly.
I mean, they was a typical American family, you know what I mean? Yeah, getting by. You know, they didn't have tons of money or nothing like that, but, you know, they always had a clean home, you know what I mean? The kids always went to school. I mean, you know what I mean? Like, they had beautiful daughters. I mean, you know what I mean? Like, I don't know what else to say about it, you know what I mean? Like, and the stuff that's saying that this been going on for all these years, and, you know what I mean? It's crazy.
The legal fight has also moved into a new phase. How much anyone connected to this case is allowed to say publicly. A judge has granted a gag order for Gary Siders Jr. after his attorney argued that officials' language, almost feral, worse than livestock, has created a real risk of poisoning a jury pool in a county with fewer than 13,000 residents. Christina Siders' attorney has filed for a similar order on her behalf. As of now, that request hasn't been ruled on. If more gag orders are granted, expect the flow of new official detail on this case to slow down from here. Not everyone close to the family is defending the official narrative, but not everyone is condemning it either. A distant relative by marriage, who says he's known the family since childhood, has pushed back on the idea that the parents and grandparents raised their children this way, pointing out that other adult children from the extended family are, in his words, successful members of society. It's one voice, and it doesn't cancel out what investigators found. But it's a reminder that the people closest to this family are just as split on what happened as the internet is. Among the 16 children, there were twin sisters, Faith and Bailey Siders, who records show were conjoined. They were born on November 20th in 2022 at roughly 24 weeks and died about an hour later at Riverside Methodist Hospital. It's a detail that's easy to skip past in a case with this many horrifying details competing for attention. But behind the headline numbers, 16 kids, 4 adults, 16 counts each, there's loss. The case file alone doesn't capture, and this is some of the clearest evidence of it. Josh Odell lives right behind the Hamden house. He says it plainly. The place seemed abandoned. No noise, no outside activity, nothing to suggest 16 people were living inside. It's the same through line connecting both properties this family lived in. A family that kept its children hidden enough that people within shouting distance had no idea they existed. Geography is part of it. The Hamden home sits along a rail embankment in a village of under 1,000 people, visible from the road but shielded by trees and brush from anyone dropping by. Institutions are part of it. The dismissed truancy case, the kids never enrolled at all, a family that moved counties and possibly states, always staying ahead of any one agency piecing it together. And perception is part of it. A big family, homeschooling, an insular household, none of it reads as an emergency from a distance, right up until officers serving that public indecency warrant found what they found. Prosecutors have said there's no evidence so far of trafficking or a broader public safety threat. This is being treated as intrafamily. But intrafamily doesn't mean small. 16 children spent years shaped by what happened in these homes. People keep comparing this to the Turpin case. 13 children found shackled and starved in Paris, California, after one of them escaped and called 911. The surface similarities are real. A family hiding a large number of kids, oblivious neighbors, a rescue triggered by something outside the abuse itself. The difference is evidentiary. Turpin involved documented, confirmed restraint and chaining. The Cedars case centers on neglect, unsanitary conditions, and room confinement, with whether that confinement was physically forced still an open legal question that will shape how the charges are ultimately proven. What both cases really share is the mechanism, isolation. Not one dramatic act, but the slow removal of every outside eye, teacher, doctor, neighbor, who might have asked a question early enough to change things. All 16 are in the custody of Ohio's Department of Child and Family Services. Ohio lawmakers have already approved $1 million in emergency funding, specifically to help cover the cost of caring for these children as they're placed. Reporting indicates many will need therapeutic foster care, placement built for kids with significant trauma, not standard foster care, given that some have little or no verbal communication and years of development shaped by isolation. Whatever happens to the 4 adults, the 16 children will be rebuilding long after this case stops trending. The case is headed to a grand jury. As of now, no indictment has been returned, though one defense attorney has said proceedings are expected to be scheduled toward the middle to end of this month. Special prosecutors from the Ohio Attorney General's office are assisting. The Ohmer Street property remains an active crime scene. The Gallia County property, now under different ownership, was never formally investigated as part of this case, but clearly holds pieces of the same story. Open questions remain. Full parentage for all 16 children, Gary Sr.'s competency to stand trial, how a grand jury weighs the disputed room confinement claim, how far the gag orders will extend, and what other records, from Gallia County, from West Virginia, from possibly Wisconsin, still haven't surfaced. Every new piece of this story has made it more disturbing, not less. If you want the next update the moment it drops, subscribe. Everything here comes from official statements, court filings, and established reporting. Where facts are disputed, like the room confinement, or whether Elizabeth Siders should be considered a victim, we've said so, rather than presenting one side as settled. This is an active case. Charges are allegations, not convictions, and everyone named is presumed innocent until proven otherwise.